Mitchie, are we live on Instagram?
Not yet, sir. Yep, we are.
Oh, we are live on Instagram. Dami, are we good on the old bookski? We're live. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? We are here on a beautiful Tech Tuesday to talk about the brand new XPEDITION from Polaris. We're also going to touch on the XD 1500 Ranger. But in order to do all that, we got to go over and talk to Justin Smith.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate the introduction, man. Always awesome with that. And yes, he is actually correct. We're going to be going over all the little details and things that we found on the new Polaris XPEDITION. Since we've had one for a week or two to do some tuning and all of our product development on this one, I think we might be uniquely qualified to give you guys a little bit of a heads up. This is not a review. This is kind of like a first impression. Might be the right one, right, Mitch?
Yep.
After putting some miles on it and running it through some rough stuff and doing some tuning, I think we might be able to point out some of the really cool factors and features on this new vehicle if you guys are considering doing this. So with that in mind, we've got a couple experts here with us that know a lot more about this than I do because they've spent way more seat time inside this vehicle. First off, Mitch Axelson, right over there. He has probably got, what, 100 miles in this thing? 75?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Somewhere in that range.
Somewhere like that. But from stock to where it is, you've got the most time. Mm-hmm. Also, Ernie and yourself were in there together for the most of it.
Yep.
And how many times, for instance, how many times were the shocks off this between spring kit, shock internals, and a whole bunch of other stuff?
Sorry, I don't know. You're standing behind me. Shoot, probably, I don't know, 20 times.
Yeah.
20, 25 times with
and that's
cycling, everything. And
just to where we're at right now. We
Yeah.
still have more time to throw into it as
Yeah.
well. So a lot of the stats on this thing, we'll give you a little bit at a time as kind of we walk around this thing and look at it. But some of the stuff that I would like to point out is the obvious. I mean, it's full cab, AC, heater, which is definitely the direction that everybody is going between the Can-Am stuff and also the other Polaris vehicles coming out with all of it. I remember 2 years ago when we had our General that we did all our testing on, one of my goals was to try and make my own aftermarket air conditioning system for that thing with a closed cab. And we actually bought all the parts to do it. And then we heard a rumor that Polaris was coming out with it next year, so we gave up. And they've done a really good job. On the AC side of things, you guys know that we're in Arizona. I think we just skipped our 30-some day in a row over 110.
Record-breaking, yes.
Which, by the way, I would like to point out, is no different than last year or the year before or the year before that. It's Arizona. It's 110 all the time in the summer. So nobody around here cares except for the news. But one thing that we do is we don't stop testing, no matter whether it's 110, 15, or 19 the other day, whatever it was.
We just wake up a little bit earlier.
Yeah, yeah, like 4:30 in the morning instead of 6:30.
Yeah.
But go out and test a little bit more. So the AC, though, in this thing will absolutely keep up when it's 115 outside and you're running the thing around. That was like a kind of a bet amongst us. Yeah, it's got AC, but it barely would keep up. It's just like AC just to say that you have AC. Not true. You sit in the back seat in this thing and it actually cools you down. So the AC does kick butt. Understand that. We haven't tried the heater yet, clearly. But
It is impressive. It is impressive.
So Mitch, kind of give everybody a flavor for how this thing, how about let's go into the ride quality stock. Mm-hmm. And then we'll kind of go into some of the things on the inside. If you can talk about seating and cab and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Stock, it was actually pretty impressive. We were pretty surprised at what it was capable of doing. Usually you get a General or, you know, the new XPEDITION or whatever it might be, this style of vehicle, if you will.
Or like a Defender.
Or a Defender, yeah.
You don't expect much.
Right. It's kind of like a, 5 to 10, 15 mile an hour cruiser through some choppy stuff. And, it is kind of what it is. So took it out, drove it, kind of got a feel for it, and looked down and noticed that we were doing like 28, 32 miles an hour through some whoops with factory stuff on it, which is, again, impressive. So really like the idea of, what they did with it, if you will. The way it rode, the way we put it through, everything that we put it through. So After we did that, we brought it back. We did our spring kit on it, obviously, and took that out and tested that with the factory valving in it still. So what it did there was basically plushed it up significantly. It was a little harsh on the factory side just through some chop and chatter, some small rocks, stuff like that. Put a dual rate
But
spring kit on
impressive
it.
stock.
Very impressive, yes.
What kind of shocks are on stock?
John, these are Fox QS3s.
QS3s with spiral.
Spiral inner bodies.
Yes. So what is a spiral inner body? Anybody? Anybody? Bueller?
It spirals.
It does spiral. So I heard a rumor that they were actually considering rifle bore as the name for these shocks, but it was shut off because rifles and guns and things like that weren't very marketable within the public arena. So spiral design. What it is on the inside of the shock, you've got a shock body that normally is smooth with a piston and a piston wear band. And that's a solid seal. There's also a bypass shock, which is an outside tube that you can see, an inside tube with holes and valving on it that bypasses oil around it. That would be the same thing that you see factory on some Polaris turbos and like a Can-Am X3. Bypasses typically have a more plush ride because they bypass oil instead of feeling that rough chop and chatter. These spiral design have a groove cut within the body on the inside that spirals up the shock, allows oil to go through that groove around the piston, which is basically bypassing. Does the same thing as a bypass tube, it's just not valvable. But it gives you the feel of a bypass, plush ride quality without having the need for the extra weight and cost of two tubes and all the other stuff that goes with it. So larger piston with a bypassing system and a spiral body, pretty bitchin' actually.
One really cool thing with that too, Justin, is the factory side of it. When you put a couple hundred miles on these, the car starts to sit lower. You start to kind of get past that zone or into that zone, if you will.
You feel the difference where you pass the bypass spiral section and get into the bump where there's no spiral line?
You start to feel stiffer side of things. It gets, start pick up the chop and chatter. You start feeling a lot of negatives with that. So
you can feel it lower down because it gets out of the zone.
100%. So going to a spring kit, getting the car back up to ride height gets you out of that zone, and it actually does plushing things up.
Out of the bump zone and into the standard bypassing spiral zone, which is the ride quality on all of it.
Correct.
Take a look at the rear shock so you can see a little bit of that with the camera at the same time. What's that? Oh, gotcha. So basically, Josh, we just want to continually walk in circles around the car so everybody can see every nook and cranny of this thing as we're talking about it.
Yep.
Plus, that means you don't have to show our ugly faces if you're showing this car the whole time, which is awesome.
Stay close to that.
Okay, so we're going to walk around the car and talk about a bunch of stuff, you guys. If you guys have anything that you want us to point out, we will stop and do that. But back to the shock. Internally, it's a bypass shock without a second tube because it's got a spiral line throughout. That is a really cool new design that nobody's ever seen, and the plush factor is very nice, especially to start with.
Yeah.
Mitch's point, make sure that you've got the ride height correct on this, which I believe is listed at 14 inches of ground clearance.
On a
stock.
a 30-inch tire, 14.
On a 30, so you throw a 32, that's going to be 15 inches.
Yep.
We've got 32s on this. It's set at 15 and a half ride height.
We are 15 and a quarter in the front, 15 in the rear. So
okay, so
close,
right at the factory number that they recommend. And again, that's really important to keep the piston within that spiral bypass zone, so you've got the ride quality.
Yeah, and honestly, doing the spring kit on top of that and noticing that change was just drastic enough right there. It was like, holy cow, it really, really woke the thing up and allowed you to not feel any of that chop and chatter and jarring and anything else that you can feel through it.
Mitch, how much does this new car weigh?
2,800 pounds.
2,800 pounds. John, you got something to add?
The 4-seat North Star.
4C North Star is 2,800 pounds. So that would mean the two-seater is probably 2,500 to 2,600 pounds in that range. So let's just say 2,600 to 2,800 pounds on these things new. That is no joke when it comes to the amount of weight on a UTV,
girl.
you guys. I mean,
And this one's got the full stereo system, subwoofer, all that kind of stuff, plus ride command.
Mm-hmm. So all the accessories, all the weight. The reason that I point out the weight, the reason I point out the weight is not that it's a turd. the reason I point the weight out is because ride height's very important. You start throwing extra weight on top of 2,600 pounds, you're going to see that piston get out of the bypass zone inside the spiral section, and you're going to lose some ride quality. So having something ride lower does not mean it rides softer in a situation like this. It can actually ride a lot stiffer.
Yep.
So ride heights are important. Adjust your preload. Change to a spring kit to fix it if you guys add a bunch of accessories or you see that it sags or does whatever you want to do. But super important. Mitch, back to spring kit. So after you got spring kit dialed,
Yes.
you dove into.
Sorry, I was distracted there. After we got the spring kit dialed, we dove into the valving side of it. Obviously want to make it even plusher and not lose any of our bottom out resistance. That is the goal. So we're about a couple tries into it right now. We're getting pretty close on it. We are still testing it and driving it more and, really getting it dialed in on that side. But we are very happy with the direction that it is going. Capable. It is very, very, very capable of doing a lot of different terrains and a lot of different riding styles. So
One thing we found out is that it's really nice, like 30 mile an hour and less. It pretty much rolls through everything you want to do. If you want to step it up and go through some whoops, it'll actually do it.
Yep.
It requires a little bit of effort, spring kit and internals to get it to do that. But are we, are all of us who buy this going to be 50 mile an hour through the whoops?
absolutely not.
Pretty rare, right? It's probably going to be 30 mile an hour and less, maybe a little bit more trail stuff, maybe not so whooped out. I can see this being the air-conditioned version of my hot rod UTV, and I bring the family out on the same trails that we're always going, but we're going to go a little bit slower than we do in kind of the Pro R or whatever.
Yep.
So a little more plush ride, a little slower, probably spot on for where this needs to be.
Yeah, and the adjustment side of it too is really cool because you can have it on number one and be plush and comfortable and drive it, rock crawl it or drive it as slow as you want and still be nice and comfy, if you will. And then turn it up on the adjuster side and it can basically handle what you want to put it through. So
John?
Well, so my first take on this, just looking at it, it looks like a big Ranger. But the suspension and everything, the way it's set up, is more like a General or General XP.
Yep.
So the specs on the suspension, travel-wise and everything, look more like a General. So it's big as a Ranger, but sporty like a General XP.
Yeah.
And with good shocks to start with, and you can make them even better with what we're doing.
Yep, absolutely.
Good point, John. It kind of is a combination of all the good things of both of the others in the past. Steve, you got something cool?
No.
No.
You guys have mentioned what it weighs. How much does it cost, Justin?
Ooh, excellent question. I think that, Mitch, you were looking that up earlier, starting at 40,000?
Starting at 40 for the 2-seat, and then you're all the way up to, I believe, 45,000 for
The North Star.
the 4-seat North Star,
All
top of the
accessories.
line, everything you want. Yeah, it's you're probably more than that out the door after tax, title, and license.
But if you're comparing as well the North Star versions on the Ranger to this North Star, this is way better HVAC than the existing North Star Ranger.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cools way better. The cab is way more sealed for dust and everything.
Yeah, that was actually
Night
that's a
and
good
day
point, John.
difference.
When we were
Actually, take a look. Here's a door seal right here. It's not just a crappy gasket like in the past would just be like a sealed trim.
It's more automotive.
Yeah, it really is. It's got, kind of an accordion shape to it that you would see in a normal road car. And take a look at where it seals. Look on the inside of this. This is after us testing. The only dust in this thing is from our feet, from getting in it. So it seals really well. What's the noise like, Mitch? Super quiet?
It's actually not. It was kind of shocking on that side. You hear a lot of engine noise, and John was sitting in the back, and he said it was even worse in the back seat. So,
Yeah, I would definitely want it to be quieter if I was sitting in the back seat all day.
one cool thing though is it does have a rear bench seat, which is kind of uncommon for 4-seat cars, if you will. But the middle seat is open. You can fit people there. Both side seats. What was that word, John? Bolsters?
Well, the sides are bolstered. The sides and the back are bolstered. The center is not.
Yep.
So sitting in on the sides and the back, you feel secure, but in the center, you feel a little bit more floppy, loosey, slide around.
Floppy and loosey.
Yeah.
Technical terms that, off-road racers typically use to lock you in the seat. Dom, you had something good?
Yeah. Mr. Robbie Frazier, he just tuned in and said, sorry if the question's already been asked, Mitch. Does the AC keep up in the summer, and is the cab well insulated, in your
Yes.
opinion?
Yes and yes.
Both of those questions, the answer is yes. We did cover that, but we'll do it again. The AC keeps up, and the AC keeps up in the back seat, too.
The back seat isn't as great. It's kind
But
of
what did you expect versus what it is?
it pretty damn good. In the front, it's really good. In the back, it's okay.
Cool. I think that's a win because,
Absolutely.
nobody expected these things to actually have a ton of AC, and they clearly stepped up.
Fan blows and it's blowing cold air. Up front, it was 90 something today.
Awesome. Mitch, have a seat in there and describe the inside.
So first off, this button, or this toggle switch, if you will, we thought was really cool. We were driving it, we didn't know what it was at first.
Let me set this up really quick. After the very first drive, Mitch came back and he was like, man, I really like this thing. The problem is it's kind of a turd and I don't think it'll ever go over 30 miles an hour. I'm like, oh man, that's kind of a bummer. Turns out that switch is what?
This, I believe, I could be wrong, but something to do with the accelerator, if it's cutting fuel or adding fuel, or the position of the throttle, something along those lines. But you basically have a comfort mode, you have a standard mode, and then a sport mode. So your throttle position and how far you push the pedal down is actually controlled by this button. So if you're in comfort mode, maybe you're rock crawling it, or you're wanting to kind of just cruise through some trails and not be all over the place, you have that option. Standard is more along the lines of like a normal General or like a normal Ranger or Defender, whatever. Sport mode, you breathe on the pedal, it's like, let's go right now. So after we figured that out and we drove it again, we were playing with that. And this thing is actually pretty impressive for how heavy it is, how quick it gets up out of its way, and RPMs and all that. It was actually impressive. The room you have in here is great. Plenty of room to sit. Your knees aren't into anything. The footrest is nice, really like that. Your headlight switch is right here, easy to get to. Four-wheel drive's easy to get to. The windshield's nice. Your visibility is insane. I love that about this too. When you're coming up over something, you're not like having to reach forward and kind of look over the hood to see where you're going. You can see everything. It's really, really nice on that side. Stereo, obviously, the dash is all pretty much
Full
the same.
ride command on this one.
Yep. Window switches down here, which I thought were pretty cool. But both driver's side, both passenger side, all electric.
I kind of prefer those there as opposed to the door.
I do too.
Some other ones have the window stuff on the door, and I'd rather have it in the middle.
We were thinking about maybe if they were flipped, like the one closest to you is the front, but I don't know, personal opinion, I guess, on that. But the center console, I believe, comes factory with a lock on it, which I thought was pretty cool.
You can put your personal protection device in there.
Whatever you might put in there, you can
Oh, sorry, Californians. You can't do that.
you can lock it up. Thought that was a cool little
Steering wheel,
thing.
telescopes, and tilts.
Yep. So fully adjustable on that. The
Oh,
one
do
thing
demonstrate, Mitch.
What's that?
Demonstrate that column,
The
please.
telescope. There you go.
Yep, see. One thing I don't like is you kind of feel like when you're driving it, you sit up and forward a little bit, but again, personal
Yeah,
preference on that side,
it's
not
a
a big
utility
deal.
vehicle.
It's got a Delmite. Well, when the key's on, it's got a Delmite. The roof is actually, you pointed that out, John, it's not actually like glued to it, it's bolted to it, so if you ever needed to replace something or whatever, you can actually pull it out and swap it. Thought that was pretty neat. Just the seating's comfortable. You got a handle right here, and you have a handle on the door for the passenger, so they feel safe and secure when they're riding in it as well. The doors are heavy, they shut nice. All really good things, honestly. It's built.
Fuel tank underneath the front seats, though, and
Yep.
12.5 gallons.
Yep.
So that's a little bit bigger tank than you'll find in a General. The only issue I saw with the tank being there, if you're sitting in the back, there's nowhere to put your toes underneath that seat in front of you because the gas tank's there.
Now, 12.5 gallons. Most normally aspirated Polarises are like 10 miles a gallon, right? So you're looking at 120 miles range on that. And that's really cool because a lot of the other stuff's like 80, 90 miles max. It seems like 80 miles isn't quite enough to get from pit stop to pit stop, certainly in Baja or any of the races. But 100 definitely is. It's just a little bit more is all it takes, and this has it.
Well, who knows what your fuel mileage will be with a bigger car too, so it might wash out. I don't know.
Well, hopefully not.
Yeah,
We'll see.
That'd be great if it didn't.
This is cool up here too, Josh. If you want to come up to the front, it's got a plug, 2-prong plug for like a battery tender.
Ooh.
So you can plug it right in there. You don't have to add it to it or connect to your battery or do anything like that. There's a lot of cool little neat things that they were so generous and thought of to add on to it.
Generous
Yeah.
and thoughtful. A couple of things that
Factory winch. It
Yeah.
does come factory winch, factory bumpers. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
A couple of things that I noticed on it, just looking around. I mean, I tend to go towards the engineering side of stuff. Ball joints on this are larger than the previous models. You get over to the frame construction. If you look at the upper tube on this, okay, number one, there's normally not an upper tube all the way down to the winch mount on any of these. It usually stops at the shock mount. You don't see any structure forward. But come to the back. What you can see really easy with the bed up is the size of the frame construction on this, 1.75" tubing. I don't have a tape measure on it, but I'm just guessing. That's about 1 inch.
2 inch.
It might be that big, but it's really big. It's not like your standard frame rails. I mean, this is kind of the norm for what you see on frame construction in these. And now take a look at what you got. I mean, obviously, it weighs more, it needs it, but they spent some time on the engineering on this. It's clear. And support on things like winches, very, very, very important. Mitch,
Yep.
you had something to add to that?
Shock hardware is also all 12 millimeter.
Ooh, big
The
step
front
up.
used to be 10 mil on a lot of that stuff. It is 12 mil now, so another cool
Another one on the outside,
of that.
5-lug wheel.
5-lug, yep.
Now, we don't know if that's the same 5-lug as a Pro R, but a 5-lug is obviously a step up. And it needs it because of the weight. Obviously, it must be a bit of a requirement on the engineering side of things, but that's really cool. Automotive and not UTV, kind of where everything is going. Steve?
Mitch, what are some products we have for this vehicle?
Oh, gee, we're going
Steve
right,
always
right
selling.
to it, huh?
Excellent.
Those questions.
Just kidding. Currently working on, everything we can. Right now we have front rear links, springs and valving, dive into tie rods and some other things that we can come up with. Maybe some new parts for
What do those look
this
like,
car
Mitch?
as well. Well, right down her, you can see the front link on the front bar. It is a little bit longer of a link than what they're normally run, which is kind of interesting, but just because of frame geometry and bigger tubing and everything, they kind of had to do that. And then the rear, similar to a normal General. You can actually see that one really good, Josh.
Rear shock mounted to the lower arm.
Yep.
You know, new on some models. Certainly on Pro R front, on the back of this one.
Yep.
One of the things we haven't talked about yet on this, since we're on the back, is the factory tie-down assembly. The lockdown system for this is really bitchin'. This track system allows you to put stuff anywhere you want, top, sides, tie things down any way you like. The hitch receiver on the back, let's look at that real quick. That might be the first receiver that actually can tow something on any UTV. I don't, I'm joking, but I do think that this thing's rated for a lot. Do you know, John?
Not as much as the new Ranger XD 1500.
What's the rating on the new Ranger?
3,500 pounds?
3,500 pounds. That means it can launch little
I think
boats.
so.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
like
I
it.
might be off there a bit, but the carrying capacity and hitch capacity on the new XD 1500
Over the top.
are huge. Sorry,
Sorry
without jumping ahead.
Overlapping, I apologize. But this thing will actually tow some stuff. Something that maybe a lot of them wouldn't do in the past. Steve, looks like you might have something you want to add.
Yes, I do. I want to point out, can I borrow that real quick? John, if you could stand next to Justin real quick.
Oh, God.
I would love to point out the difference in color of shirt. John, who gave you that faded ass red t-shirt that you are wearing right now?
It's hard to find good help, all right?
He keeps his clothes a long time. There's nothing wrong with that.
Holes, maybe a few stains. I mean,
Look,
come on.
I'm guilty of wearing the same shirt for 5 years till somebody else says, "Hey, there's a hole over there. Look out."
Golly.
But
Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome. All love,
So-
John.
back to the Expedition. Mitch, after doing some tuning and after working with it, and I know because I've seen it, testing this thing with weight in the back, with people in the back, with nobody in it, weight in the back and nobody in it, all kinds of different variations back and forth. I think we've got something that actually works for a lot of different terrain, works
Yep.
for a lot of different driving styles, works for a lot of different speeds.
Yeah.
And you can get Plush Ride for in the low mile an hour range, say 5 to 20 miles an hour.
Yep.
But it's actually capable if you want to go 30 or 40 through the whoops, it'll do it.
Yeah, and
That's pretty impressive.
with this shock specifically too, you know, ease of adjustment is 1, 2, or 3. So it's not very hard for people to
Easy.
turn it up if they want to turn it up. On that note, this shock right
Sit back here.
Josh, come here. So when you're driving this thing for like, I don't know, 30 minutes, if that,
A little hot.
you try to reach up in here and your adjuster, you might be able to see it better from the top, but it is literally right behind the exhaust. And yeah, they have a heat shield on it, but it don't really do anything. It is,
So make your adjustments before you get it hot,
yeah,
would be your suggestion on the back one.
it's no fun.
But at least it's not 25 clicks and a tool required to do it.
True. That is very true.
Get in there with a rag or a glove or whatever it is. Steve, you had something to say. You need a mic, sir.
Yes, I do, Justin. If we come over to the passengers, or the driver's side, sorry, people had questions on the snorkel basically going to the clutch cover. Do you know why it is designed that way?
We have questions too.
I also have a question, too, on why it's designed that way. I don't see why, but do you know why?
Actually, I don't know why, but if you guys would like me to hazard a guess, I will throw one out there. Just don't hold me to it if I'm wrong. I think that the reason that tube is designed with those reservoirs on the bottom is for water. And if you do get water in the system, then that's a place for the water to collect and not go into the clutch.
So it's time to fill up.
You would have to fill up all 3 of those. What we're looking at is this section right here. You would have to fill up all 3 of those before it would actually allow water inside the clutch and slip the belt. But that is just me. So if you got this thing below the intake at the top of the cab to fill it, you got other problems. Okay. But, you know, if you're driving next to your buddies and they're blasting you with a whole bunch of spray off their front tires and it's hitting the side of the cab, right up here is the intake for this system. If you get somebody just tidal waving you sideways, like a kid at the bus stop that you want to get with your truck. Mitch, I heard you do that when you were younger.
I did. I was a bully.
But if you just want to blast somebody and you hit that, then maybe that is a particular way. And I am guessing, so you guys don't hold me to it. Polaris engineers, sorry, just a guess.
So we did have a request to show the back seat leg room.
Well, you know what? I think we had a request to see if John could exit the vehicle quickly. In an emergency situation, how quick can you get out of there? Is it 3 seconds?
Well, first off, you got plenty of knee room, leg room, and everything, but your feet don't go too far underneath there. I would like a little bit more, but I'm 6'1", 200 pounds, so not bad for back seat. Egress isn't that bad.
Comfy,
It's not too
unless you're
bad.
sideways or upside down.
right?
We'll have to test that later.
I'm kind of nimble if I have to.
Dom, what other stuff do you have? Any questions?
Steve took it.
Oh, Steve took the question. Okay. Very nice of you to do that.
Do you still have our list of pros and cons, John?
Well, a couple things I noticed because I'm more of a rock crawler. It's awesome that you can fit 32-inch tires on it, stock, no rubbing. Turning radius, incredible for a big old boat like this.
It really is.
That's
really,
really
really
cool.
tight turning radius, which is awesome for trails and maneuverability.
That was one of the things I hated on the Hondas between the 2 models, that the wider one had so much less turning radius, and even on a 2-seater, it was almost a 3-point turn in a lot of
Yep.
places.
One more thing as far as rock crawling goes. If you look down here in front, Josh, at these arms, they're all high clearance, front and rear, have good clearance up front, so you don't have to really worry about replacing your arms just to get more ground clearance.
Very cool. Factory.
Factory winch.
And just 32-inch tires on basically a utility vehicle. I mean,
Kinda
think of
heard
this
of.
as kind of like a Ranger, and you're putting 32-inch tires on it.
Yeah.
Kind of segues
It's
into the
Into
Ranger
something new.
XD1500 too. So
now that we've talked about this expedition a ton, if you guys have more questions, then please send it and we will ask them while we're standing next to it. But we kind of want to use this vehicle as a way to tee up the new one coming out from Polaris as well, and it's kind of the new Ranger, which has a name, correct, John? What is it again?
Ranger XD1500, which was just
XD1500.
introduced on Sunday night.
And so we're not, 100% studied up on all the details, but we have some for you just to keep in mind what's headed our direction. Why is it called a 1500, John?
1500 cc.
Big engine.
So it's over 1,000. So it's no longer UTV. California guys, woo! You don't have to wear a helmet if you don't
No
want to.
helmets in the dunes. Is it street legal in California?
It's getting to the point where these are big and heavy enough to where you think they would almost be street legal.
Getting there.
So that's another 3,000. That they have a North Star version of the XD 1500, which is a full cab just like that. It's over 3,000 pounds.
Wow.
So think of it as it is the 3/4 ton truck of UTVs.
And it will carry some load. It'll tow at least. We
Yes.
don't. Do you know? I
Carry,
don't know
tow, a lot.
all of it.
Lot more than anything else.
What are some of the other teasers you can throw out there when it comes to stats? We've got
Well-
a metal centrifugal belt.
So it's got a steel belt that is sealed. No maintenance. You can't adjust it. There's no helix or weights you can change or anything.
Computer
like that.
controlled, you said.
Computer controlled. Has 2 speeds, forward and reverse.
The computer keeps you in low.
So
the computer controls the gearing.
It has my Raptor has different modes you can put in toy haul, Baja, rock crawl, all those different computer controlling things. That's what the XD 1500 is doing.
Kind of cool to see that you don't have to rely on a secondary spring or helix or primary spring to do all the gearing. Because if it's wrong or if it's worn out, then you lose belts and you have issues. With this, at least, computer's controlling exactly where you need to be.
And it comes with an option of a 32-inch tire. From
That's
the
cool.
factory.
Which means then that the computer-controlled clutch would have a different tune in it for a 32.
You would think.
Which tells me that the tuning of the clutch is something that we might be able to control. If
And-
we get Polaris to help us out, or break into it, or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, Evo gets into it.
Sure.
But if the stock vehicle can come with a 32-inch tire from the factory, does that mean we can put a 35 on it? Like this one comes with a 30 and we put a 32 on it.
Sure. It could be an option. I wonder if we could have a clutch flash for that. That would be a really cool thing in addition to engine horsepower
Yeah.
flashes, stuff like that.
Yep.
But the cool part about that is, on the XD 1500, it comes with, this isn't the cool part, it comes with sealed shocks. The cool part is we're going to have Fox shocks for it available early fall.
That's right. Having an idea of what was coming, we're a little bit ahead of it for the first time in a long time. We're going to have a Fox shock options for that XD 1500. The dates, I'm not going to put myself out there and say exactly what date, but it's going to happen really fast. Steve just starts laughing because he knows if I say it's not going to happen that day.
2 months, and that's 2 years.
Yeah, we don't want to go there. Thanks, Steve. Other stuff. What other cool things besides, I think it's a double clutch, dual clutch assembly, and centrifugal, right? That's just engagement on that.
I believe it's a wet clutch, all sealed.
Kind of like the Honda clutch assembly would be.
Yeah, well, the Hondas are a dual clutch.
Direct. This is dual. This would be a clutch to centrifugal.
Yeah. So
Pretty bitchin'.
Heated seats and heated steering wheel.
heated seats as well. They do have that. And the same AC is off of this, which we know works really well.
Yeah.
So what I'm wondering, you've got your 4-seat North Star Ranger, long travel, good Fox shocks and everything. Is the new XD 1500 going to take over for that setup?
Really good question. We're going to have that Ranger while we have the new 1500. So we can put them head to head and definitely compare. That Ranger that we've got currently right now rides really good. And it'd be pretty impressive if we can get something to ride better than that in
to
the new one.
Put big, you got 35s on that thing? You
Yep.
had to do portals and long travel, right?
Small portal. It's a 4-inch portal. It's not necessarily long travel, but it's a forward mounted arm. For sure. It could be a little bit wider, but it's not. If it is, it's not much.
Forward, though. probably.
Forward.
Yeah.
Forward to clear the tire under turning radius. What?
They're just over there making fun of Grandpa.
Oh, okay.
No, the Polaris. I'll talk loud. The Polaris does not have portals. The Can-Am has portals. The Polaris does not have portals.
I think it does.
No, the Polaris doesn't.
I thought I had a 4-inch on it.
Nope.
Oh, XP.
Yep.
Pro. Yeah,
Yep.
sorry.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to throw that out there for you.
Too
just so
many
we know.
vehicles.
Here we go.
This is where you guys step in and correct me
That's-
because I can't keep it all straight.
I got you.
But we'll be able to compare the two, and that's really cool. last things when it comes to the brand new one that we just kind of want to throw out there. It's more of a teaser for Polaris and all the stuff that's dropping right now. Actually, I'm kind of excited because you go through media, which I don't have. I have other people telling me how cool media is. but you've got Polaris dropping all their stuff. You got Can-Am dropping all their stuff, and it's kind of a tit for tat. I love seeing that because competition is good. It brings better vehicles for all of us and stuff that we get to go play with and test. Steve, you still have more?
There are 2 questions, Justin.
Okay.
First question being, would you be able to add IQS to this car?
Mitch, did you cycle the back yet?
We're,
Questioning more of the back
Yeah.
right is the reason.
we're working on it. It's looking like the adjuster is going to be super close. I don't know, unless we maybe swap a body cap on it or something to make it work. It's going to be a little bit more involved than just putting an adjuster in the factory shock to
So the
make it
answer
work.
is you're testing and working on it, but we don't know yet.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yep. More?
It would be cool.
Yeah, one more. What are your thoughts on Polaris buying Walker Evans?
Ooh. I think it's great. A couple reasons for that. And I'll say it.
Yes.
Walker Evans was never run really well. And it was always hard to get parts from them. It was always a hassle to get through the people that worked there who cared and knew what they were doing and did a great job, to get through the people who were there and didn't care and didn't do a good job, to the guy who knew what he was talking about to get us what we needed. We really, really like those guys, and people who are still there hope that they continue to stay there. But I know that Polaris coming in is going to do a great job with running it. They probably will step things up over there. They will probably improve the production, and they will probably improve the quality of things. I think that is great. That's kind of what we've always wanted out of the Walker stuff and out of the factory. So I think that's awesome. How that affects the industry, I don't see it affecting it in a bad way at all. I think that if Walkers get better, it's better for all of us. Are they going to take over some Fox stuff? I don't think so. I think Walker has its place. Fox has technology and certainly multi-year lead in engineering. So I think it's going to be a long time before that happens. And it doesn't really affect what we do. We want to work on every single shock available and made. And if it doesn't matter if it's a Walker or a Bilstein or, which I said correct, Steve, or an Elka or a King or anything else or an exit shock. Does not matter to us, man. We want to work on all of them. We want to sell all of them. We want to service all of them. As long as we can do that, it's a good thing. So whoever's running it, hopefully that is an option.
So do you see, well, do you see Walkers taking over live valve from Fox, or do you see Fox still supplying live valve shocks to Polaris?
That's a good question. I think that Walker has a long ways to go to be able to do a live system on their shock. They could, because Polaris owns the programming and ECU functions within a dynamics or live valve system on a Polaris, that they could take that and they could push it right into a Walker. But there's some engineering issues with bridge design and flow and into the adjuster. It's not as easy as just shoving in another magnet into an existing Walker. There's going to be some engineering involved. It's going to take some time. So if they do it, that's great. It's going to be a year or two, at least. And it'll probably be even another year after that before you see it on a vehicle. And by that time, I think that Fox is going to have a whole lot more out there. So, yeah, I can see it happening, but do I see it as an issue for anybody else? I don't think so.
So we're not going to lose our live valve capabilities in the near future.
Oh, you're definitely not going to lose that on a Polaris. You're going to have probably 2 options, I would imagine. You're going to have, live on a Walker, you're going to have live on a Fox. And I think that one is going to be the base and one is going to be the pinnacle, no matter what. And I don't see it being Walker over any time in the next few years. So that's it. Mitch, Steve, Dom, you had a question.
Yeah, I have a question. It's about the AC in this thing. They were curious on if it's a 2-stage compressor like the Can-Am. He knows the North Star Rangers couldn't keep up, but maybe this one can.
I don't think any of us know the answer to that question, man. All we know is that, like John said, this one does blow. But I can tell you this, that it keeps up a whole lot more than any previous ACs that we've seen in any of the Polarises. And that includes aftermarket stuff that I've seen people do. So I don't know the answer, but it works pretty good.
And next question was for the metal CVT. What are your thoughts going through whoops with a metal CVT? What else is there to give?
Really, really good question. I don't know enough about the engineering and the trans to speak intelligently about this, but I do think that some of the clutch packing that I've seen in the drawings for that might be friction reducers or overall load reduction units to take shock loading out of the system. I know that any of the guys in Hondas, Nissans, street-driven steel belted CVTs that have been on the market for a very long time, anybody who's ever shoved a ton of horsepower to those vehicles have had issues with the metal belt. And they've had issues with shock loading, like driving it over a speed bump under power can be a problem. So I don't think that the belt lends itself to a whole lot of power if you're going to try and double it or shove another 100 horsepower in it. I also don't think the belt would lend itself to shock loading very well. But if there is a clutch pack in there to drop some of the shock loading, then that's gone. And if it's normally aspirated only, how much power are you going to shove to it?
Well, so if you look at the intent of this vehicle, it's a workhorse. It's not meant to blast through the whoops. No, we all do that.
Okay, I'm just speaking for the possibility of guys shoving power at this and throttle jockeys. I don't think that it's going to be something you're going to shove a ton of power to a metal belt, but who knows?
Well, the specs on this thing are 110 horsepower, and I think right about the same amount of torque. So it's a torquey engine, and it's built for work, and it's a big, heavy vehicle, 3,300 pounds. So.
Yeah. I wouldn't suggest turboing this thing if you want to buy one. Maybe there's different vehicles for that if that's what you're looking for. Who knows? Any other questions? Steve, you good? Mitch?
We got one quick one. Doing installs at Dunefest. We can do some spring kit installs, but we're not doing valving there. We don't have our service install trailer, just the merch trailer.
Are you doing spring kits on the car or off the car?
You got to bring us through springs.
Yeah, bring us shocks.
Shocks
Bring
off
us
the
your-
car.
Thank you.
Shocks
I
off
just
the
wanna make
car.
sure.
We'll put the springs on there for preloads and the crossover set up for you. After that, it's on you.
And one other random question. Have you guys ever thought of designing a quick release rear sway bar link for rock crawling guys?
Yeah, they're already out there. There's a few that you can buy and do it, so that's why we haven't designed one ourselves. One thing that I hate about those is they rattle. Almost every one of them has got a lot of rattle to it. So we've spent a lot of our time devoted to an electronic version with a shock absorber link. You might have seen some pictures of that on our Pro R in some of our videos or the pre-runner. We've been testing it for about a year now. It's close. It's still not months away. It's going to be a little bit longer than that. But that's what we devoted our time to. Something that's actually tunable, clickable inside the vehicle, no noise, all that kind of stuff. Just kind of went above it, an external leak. All right? Cool. Thanks. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you guys got more questions, send it in the comments. We'll try and answer them for you. Also, as this video launches over the next few weeks, we're going to have a whole lot more time in this thing. We'll be able to answer more questions for you, so send it then. In the meantime, Steve, if anybody would like to talk about these or buy any components, products, or anything else we have, where can they go and what they need to do?
If you guys would like to talk about everything we just talked about, please call us 623-217-4959, or if you'd like to buy anything we talked about as well, www.shocktherapyusa.com.